So what I'm actually saying, leaving your village, and if you can travel in a sustainable way, and I know you're all for that, train and simple and so forth, it can teach you a lot of things that you cannot learn from the internet and you cannot learn from books, and things that will surprise you
Mm,
also, maybe
mm,
other people, and in my time, it was a lot of hitchhiking. I hitchhiked a lot through Canada, the US, and the people you meet constantly, that is something
mm,
that cannot be substituted, you
mm,
know. So there is some wealth in there, but on the other hand, as you say, it's not clear to me. We are 8 billion people on the planet right now. In 2083, we're going to be 11, and then we're peaking. Hopefully, we're peaking at 11 billion. How even sustainably, as you say, with your partner, just by trains,
mm,
it should be doable that all should have that privilege of traveling. It's
mm.
I don't think it's doable. Have you thought about this?
I mean, I haven't thought about it on like I haven't thought about it practically, I suppose, because I would reason that there's probably a practical answer to that question,
Mm,
which I'm not educated in. Uh, or on, I guess. I do think one of the great gifts of The Elephant and the Blind that
mm,
you've written is this appeal to a kind of serious epistemic practice of
mm,
coming into self knowledge. And whilst that doesn't answer the question about can we all ecologically travel
mm.
and tourist in a sustainable way, it does, at least for my generation, I think, clarify or just re-represent uh, the difference between being motivated to do these things for a spiritual materialism or buying into the tourism.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that tends to be a more immediate question for me.
Uh-huh. That's interesting. That's interesting. So you would say if you had plans to travel by train down to Greece or so, you would also judge your traveling goals by those standards. Do we want to see something, or do we want to learn something, or something like that?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I'm those questions. I mean, okay, I mean, this is just me personally. Those
Mm,
questions tend to
mm.
be front of mind, but I am, I think the question you're raising is still very important because I am speaking from the privilege of having already traveled. Uh, and with the social media these days, it feels like there's the world to me, I perceive it as less unexplored.
Oh, yes. That is another thing, I realize in some of the contemplative folks I know, there's this new little fad, they call gratitude practice. So,
Uh,
all they do is in the evening, they write down 3 things they're grateful this day. And I realized I could be this grumpy old man, it would help me to see how much I've seen, but, of course, many of the places I have had wonderful experiences at with my backpack
mm,
before you were born,
mm,
maybe, are now completely destroyed,
mhm,
and it has, moved me to tears if I just saw it on TV.
mm,
For instance, in Sumatra, there's a lake called Lake Toba, and on that, lake, there's an island called Samosir, And when I got there, that was just so wonderful. I'm not gonna describe it, a place. And now they have, high-rise buildings and motorboats on the lake, and everything's gone. My wife is a little younger, and I want to go to northern Burma with her and show her things that were so magic when I was there. And then there's a lot of hot air balloons and motorbikes. And the worst sort of German tourists. I'm not going to go into any details, And I have the feeling, I mean, if you wanted to do something, I mean, coming from New Zealand is a very special, I think, way to start. But
Mm,
if you wanted to do something that was novel or untouched, you would today have to get pretty adventurous. I mean, do things, I don't know, in Mongolia, or Kazakhstan, or down to Patagonia that you can do when you're young and when you're in shape, but which, how to say it in English, are a little strenuous also. You
mm,
know, if you wanted to really get out of touch with civilization, it's much more difficult for your generation
mm.
than for people who came before you. It was more easy to have adventures with very little money, and now there's all kinds of weird stuff going on in these countries, you know, military juntas, dictatorships, and all that.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm coming from is at this point with how creative I would need to be to reach these destinations, I can no longer I'm not really convinced that I would be doing that for any genuine reason. Uh, like I
That's
don't
interesting.
yeah.
What is a genuine reason? You tell me.
Uh, well, in the medi in the contemplative context, I'm trying to discern some kind of difference between things that are egoically motivated
Mhm,
or something which is more coming from a spontaneous arising compassion, as
mhm,
much that is possible.
mhm,
And when it comes to kind of these broad stories or concepts, that for me is a sign straight away that there's a whole lot of priors and conditioning and
mhm.
maybe unconscious stories which are infiltrating to
Yeah, see, but that's just the problem. Imagine now you're talking to somebody who turned into a professional
yes.
philosopher. I don't know how that could happen. Somehow I strayed. Um, uh, I know. I I'll tell you another anecdote from my life. I never wanted to write a PhD thesis.
Mm,
I thought at the time, at 24, my official position was that's a bourgeois ritual. And nobody who ever is serious about these issues would think about getting a
mm,
degree in academia and getting a PhD grant. I rejected this, arrogant as I was. Then they offered me a grant, and I thought, okay, if the system is so stupid that I can live underground for another 3 years, do asanas and meditate and get gassed by the police on demonstrations and stuff like that. Um, I'll write a thesis. Okay, so I wrote a thesis. And after the thesis, I first went to the Krishnamurti talks in India and then on to Australia, didn't make New Zealand. And I didn't, you know, I had no plans. And 2 years later, I come back with my girlfriend from India. And the people I'm sharing a house with said, your former boss called something about your future. And that's when I descended into an academic career. That's what I meant. And then in the end, end up writing books. And the interesting question, of course, is could there be a combination, say, of a researcher's life or an intellectual's life, a philosopher's life, and a contemplative life? Because one thing I really got fond of when writing The Elephant and the Blind is in the English language, you guys have a word that just doesn't exist in the German language, and that's the word of a scholar practitioner.
Sure.
And very obviously, in many different countries, there have been scholar practitioners in monasteries, in the Christian tradition, in the Middle Ages, and so forth. And can there be a way to work intellectually, mostly, not with your hands,
Mm.
without getting entangled or too attached to it? Because another thing I can report now, after 40 years of an academic career, it's interesting. You have quite a number of neuroscientists who meditate. I know some. You have quite a number of psychologists and cognitive scientists who meditate. You have almost no philosophers.
Mm.
Philosophers don't do this. It's actually weird. You would expect something different. But the fact is that many are, of course, corrupt in one way, just want to have a super job and get tenure, and are just these kind of people, and don't have a real interest in the gain of knowledge, actually. But then there's, of course, very good and extremely intense people who are so much smarter than you and I could ever be, and who, are so scholarly and have read libraries. And I'm by your standards or by our standards of a contemplative life, most of these people are very, how would one say in English? Could one say impoverished personalities? Or no, very reduced, deeply attached, you know, often very high self-esteem because, they are very convinced of whatever they have written down. They have often think they have seen something many other human beings have not seen. It's often not very nice to live among them in a
Mm.
university department. There are often difficult personalities in many ways. So I've often had, no, it's not the feelings, the clear perception. Say philosophy as a job, as it is done as a job in universities right now, is almost certainly detrimental to your mental health in a certain way. And it's certainly not something that makes you mindful or compassionate. It is rather something that makes people defensive because they get traumatized, because the competition is high. And it's not a nice social environment in general, I've found,
Mhm.
because the competitiveness somehow destroys everything. So the question is, can one have both things at the same time or not? And this is still an open question to me. Do you consider, have you ever studied anything or went to university or anything like that? Too many non-spiritual books or something like this?
I have studied, but I don't know what it does for our conversation. Yeah, I or maybe it does something. I mean, ironically, I actually have a degree in the performing arts.
Aha,
Uh,
very interesting.
but I don't know, maybe the what comes to my mind when I think about this is just I think the intervention psychology hopefully makes or adds to the picture, which is
Mhm,
like even for me when I was studying to be an actor.
mhm,
This is something I don't think I was a person who was nice to be around, but this whole story and myth I was playing out in my life
mhm,
seems to be something which lands squarely into unresolved traumas or narratives in order to prove myself in some kind of way.
mhm,
I
mhm,
don't think that is I don't think that's impossible to pursue. There's a real meaningful, or I think that the emphasis or the question is about, uh, yeah, whether or not I'm pursuing those, what is the reason I'm pursuing those things, or actually am I aware of why I'm pursuing those things?
Yes, of course. Of course. I mean, the deeper one gets into this, one also makes ugly discoveries, of course, and the
Mm.
things one didn't know about oneself. Um, do you know of any interesting connections between acting and mindfulness, say? Like in movement meditation, say Tai Chi or something like that? Or what is the most obvious interesting connection for you?
The most obvious interesting connection for me is, first of all, there's a real question about when the lights or cameras go on, there's
Yeah.
like, yeah, there's this moment of, will you be in the state that's required?
Oh,
Like,
wow.
if it's a emotional scene, for like, I think the easiest argument is like, say you're crying in the scene. When they say action, are you crying in that scene? So for me, the love of performing when I was doing it was kind of wading into this phenomenological landscape of going, where do I need to move? How do I position myself to be doing the thing that looks this way for other people? And
Very interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
and
I only know this from a different contract,
mm,
sitting in television in some talk show and discovering that this is completely different from what you thought it is at home. There are like
mm,
28 technicians and bright lights and microphones from everywhere. There's no way to stay with your breath or relax or anything. Different cameras coming to you, and you don't know on which camera you are. And you realize how much of say the television and when the lights are on as people don't listen to what is being said but just look at people how they look and if
mm,
they you know on a gut level like them if they think they're honest or not. But I mean professionally acting this must be super interesting. You could also have the task, how do I have to act to become a spiritual teacher that people perceive as having charisma and start following. Just start for what do I have to do? Do I have
mm.
to be a little delusional or do I have to be a little cunning? Uh, uh, if to gather a following, what works? uh, do you think with the training you've got, you would be up for the job? You could do that if you wanted to?
Yeah, I'd love to give that a go. One has to be careful they're not already doing it. Um, yeah. Uh, yeah, yeah, I mean, I think I could, and it would be interesting even trying to, yeah, discern the difference. What's the game the spiritual guru is playing? That's a lot of how you kind of talk about, um, kind of internalizing acting. What's that person trying to do? What are they playing? What are they
Mm,
doing? And another point you made me think of just talking about that as well. I think the other interesting thing about acting and the difference between being on the set is it's also like, and then the way that we watch it later, is it also feels like this strange experiment, which is the opposite to meditation in some ways, because it feels like you're doubling down into the naive realism
yeah.
of the scene, I suppose.
So you think you do need the immersion to be a good actor, actually. See,
Yes.
this resonates with stuff I've looked in scientifically for a bit. Interestingly, human beings become effective through self-deception, and science shows there is an evolution of self-deception. So animals self-deceive too. For
Mm,
instance, males in threat behavior try to appear like the strongest guy in town,
mm,
or also what's the English word, in courtship behavior you can see that animals fall into a role and act it out, and that is this very clearly an evolution of self-deception.
mm,
And the interesting thing is if you have to deceive large numbers of human beings, say like a Nazi orator like Goebbels in my country, the thing is you have hundreds or even thousands not caring what you say because they know it's a politician. But they're looking for little subliminal signs this guy's a liar. And the
Mhm.
best way to not give off these signs I'm acting is, while at least while on stage, to fall in full self-deception. And
Mm.
actually, if you're a big, say, a political speaker or something, at least on stage in that moment, passionately believe this stuff you're telling people. Uh, then it works because then it's embodied and
Mm.
you don't give off these signals.
Mm.
Uh, would you say that the best way to act is also like to fall into full self-deception and just be that?
Yeah, that's more well put than my acting books that I read when I was studying. I
And
think
are
what's
there also like other spiritual traditions in acting where people say, no, you have to do both things. You have to mindfully act. Are there people who say that?
well, oh man, this is really good.
Do you want me to talk about something else?
No, no, this I mean, I this is totally yeah, and this is great. I think, yeah, I mean, I don't know basically, but I think when the actor's approaching a role,
Yes.
there's this question of how can I prepare to self-deceive myself
Aha.
so that I will be believing I am this character? But that almost seems to be I wonder what this would boil down to though, because the other optimum or whatever that you're trying to attain is also being open to spontaneity too. So it's like I
Aha.
want to self-deceive myself that I am going to automatically load all the behaviors of this character, but also not be anticipating anything so that it imitates life, the
And
physical
so
forms.
this also would even mean that you don't learn the words, but with another person, you just have a conversation as it pops up in acting well.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that as an improvisation if I'm hearing
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I meant.
But then yeah, so you could go down that line, but there's also a big difference between or there's a big felt difference between being in a scene and trying to remember your line, and then your
Yes,
actual
yes, yes.
yeah, and it coming from and it feels inspired. It isn't pre-rehearsed, and you've never heard yourself say or deliver that
Yes,
line in that way
yes.
before. Yeah.
But you see, there's an interesting connection there to when you spoke about tourism earlier and people seeking pleasure. It's almost like when you said to prepare for self-deception. You prepare a situation, but the actual goal is to have somehow have intensity or an experience of meaningfulness by getting totally self-deceived
Mm.
in a new situation. Is that right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that
I mean, a lot of entertainment is that, right?
yeah. Yeah, and even being, I guess, yeah, that absorption sort of thing of being lost in a story. You wanna be lost in it as well as a performer.
So last question before you ask me questions. So,
Yeah.
what I thought is impressive. I've sometimes heard this being said when people remembered a certain spiritual master they knew. They say the amazing thing was when you just talked to him briefly or passed him by, you had the feeling he knows you better than you know yourself. And now, if your task as an actor trying to conjure up a following and you wanted to create a cult was to give people the feeling this guy knows me better than I know myself. How would you do this as an actor?
Well, I mean, first of all, you'd probably research it. You'd try and
Ah,
speak around these, yeah, the
theory.
sorts of
Yes.
people, yeah. And then you might be able to pick up on something unconscious anyway, I guess, because not all of the acting approach has to be, yeah, I guess, decided upon. So you might just get the feel of what they're doing. My hunch is that you're going to be saying less than the people that you're with,
Yes.
and you might be having wide eyes, you might be smiling a little bit, and you might be, I guess, trying to sow doubt in the person you're in an exchange with, of
Mhm.
not necessarily knowing more than the other person, but uh, acting as though you know something they don't know.
Mm. Mm.
Or maybe that's more of the, self-deceptive kind of guru thing more than knowing someone more than they know. Yeah, it would be.
No, 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 there's something to it. I mean, giving the feeling people I mean, that's what you have also with real eminent,
Mm,
uh, personalities is that they know something you don't know, which is extremely relevant for one reason and another, and they're trying to convey it, but they
mm,
just can't speak clearly. So
mm,
they are just trying to convey something super rare, and you believe that they know this,
mm,
and it's relevant to your own life. And
mm, mm.
um, but now you ask me things, else we talk about acting
Okay.
all the time.
Well, I had, I mean, I'll if I cut this into an interview or something, I'll,
Yeah, do what you want to.
yeah. So I think I would just actually go to, these are questions I have which I think would, the sort of gap I see. So one question I have is, when we have, if we're new to meditation, we might really have the sense that we might have understood that there's something to glean, to see, to attain. It's something to aspire to. This is how some new meditators are coming into it. A meditation offers peace or calm.
Mhm,
And then there's this problem within their own, I guess, phenomenal experience or subjectivity when they sit down, where there's immediately this agent who's looking at the
mhm,
meditation. And that happens when when they sit down to meditate, the agent is there,
sure.
and now they're trying to get themselves into this meditation. But then also I notice, if I some of these meditators will speak about it later or at other points in the day, and they're convinced that that agent is always a part of their
Mhm.
experience. And this seems to maybe oversee a different level of identification when their minds are wandering. It also ignores
Yeah,
things.
yeah, yes, yes.
And so, given your whole body of work, I'm wondering if you can lay out for me a little bit, what is this subjectivity we are in,
Mm,
and what is this moving identification
mm.
too?
Of course, we don't know. As you may have noticed, this book is also an experiment. So, like, the idea was not to write for academics only and professionals, but have at least the first half of every chapter something everybody can read, and then have a teaser. So, my ideal reaction to the second half would be that researchers read it and say, "Ah, no, this guy. No, no, no. I can do this much better." And then inspire somebody to drill really deep in this. And one main topic is, of course, one could, what you have said, conceptually, one could frame it in a number of different ways. So, mm, a simple conceptual distinction with John Donne and Evan Thompson have made, which I think is very helpful, is between dual mindfulness and non dual mindfulness. And dual mindfulness will be that there is a representation of a meditator who wants to be mindful and practices this. And I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. That's one phenomenology. And then there's a non-dual kind of mindfulness, which as soon as you've heard about it is very interesting for you and you want to have it. And the thing is, as soon as you recognize that it has maybe just unveiled itself by itself, you want continuity. At least I'm like this, because you've read about continuity and continuity about mindfulness and keeping this up, and then it's immediately gone. Another distinction um, that is very helpful is between the phenomenology of effort and effortless mindfulness. I think you have also liked the way Loch Kelly expresses this a lot. I think he has done a very, very, very good job of making this glimpsing stuff, a lot of the Tibetan stuff, really accessible to ordinary folks. Very, very good. But then, of course, I mean, this immediately turns into a concept. Another conceptual distinction I'm going to mention is what these religious scientists call gradualists and subitists. So, gradualists are people who say, by effortful dual mindfulness over years, gradually you can attain something. Nobody knows what it is. They call it liberation. And then there are the subitists, and also an old tradition says, no, nothing. Uh, it is sudden and cannot be taught. And we have exquisite philosophical discussions. And let me just relate from my own life. So, as a young man, after having practiced in a very disciplined and carefully way, I started to attend the talks of J. Krishnamurti. And he was of the kind of the first step is the last step. And teacher-disciple relationships will create the illusion this is not it. Keeps it alive. Any systematic practice, formal practice, numbs the mind. And I've done this a number of times before, but I'll just tell you one story to give you an impression how that was. So we were sitting 2,000 people in a large tent in Switzerland, and he would sit there in front and he would say, am I just a confused old man? Or am I speaking out of an infinite silence? You will never know. You are all alone in this world. This is how he talked to us. It was really cheerful, It was, and it told people you have to find. There's no way, unfortunately. You have to find it out all yourself, for yourself, which was extremely helpful for me in that stage because it cured me of a lot of this delusional stuff. Many people who are interested in this get caught in. The typical motive is I need a teacher or I cannot flourish, I cannot blossom. It's just, I claim exactly the same thing as some young people have it in the age of puberty where they think, I want to fall in love. I don't want to have in that age, I said, relationship. Who wants to have a relationship? I want to fall in love, really, with the right person. And many people go then seeking for a master, and there are people for whom this doesn't stop for their whole year, whole life. They for decades they try to fall in love with someone where they have this feeling, this is right, I can trust, I'll do what this guy says. And these are the mechanisms in us, and it's very good to become aware of these mechanisms also, to seek a teacher that tells you make this kind of effort and then you're on your track. And Krishnamurti always said be super critical, listen to everything I say, but find out for yourself. It doesn't help. And I made the decision as a young guy. Uh, okay, he says regular formal practice is total nonsense. Doesn't work like this. Um, I've looked into this. I've come to another result. And if this is what it takes, I will just stick with it. This guy has told us the first step is the last step, and it sounds right to me. I think he's right. I think the systematic approach, like training sports or something, is wrong. But this is my life, and I'll do this anyway. If that's what it takes to have, a long practice, this how to say in English, this should not be the cause, that it doesn't work. You can do this and maybe not be attached to it. That's another topic. And another very interesting thing he tried, just coming back to your question now, he told me everything that creates a sense of effort is wrong. That's for some people this may be helpful. If in your practice you can look at your breath and do you feel it, but you can also sometimes check in if there's a sense of effort here. Um, and where is who is that? And I mean, the moment you see it, um, the moment it's already almost freeing yourself from it. You see that there's an effort and a meditator. But I find, I mean, I could tell you stories about I've written a lot about the human self model in the brain and stuff, and there's an interesting layer of it for our purpose. I call it the epistemic agent model. That is the model of a knowing self that actively tries to know more. And now it got interested in liberation. And now it's in deep trouble, because, now it has to understand what that thing is. And now it has heard about pure awareness and then sits on a cushion and then it has this question, but is this pure? What is it really or not? There's something in philosophy we have dubbed the fridge light fallacy. Do you know what that is? It's
No.
it's when you open the refrigerator very carefully to see if the light has really gone out. You know, and that creeps into meditation, of course. This doubting epistemic agent who says it, what this is trivial. I'm just relaxed. This cannot be it. Or fireworks here. It's just something like this. And this epistemic agent model is something that's not your fault, I think. It's a natural mechanism in the brain that as soon as processing capacity is free, and it is when you're sitting in a calm place on a cushion, tries to bootstrap itself into existence all the time. It doesn't want to disappear. And I could say very complicated things of an allostatic control model. There's a part of the human self model that as soon as the homeostatic control model feels everything is right, I'm warm, I'm satiated, my breath feels right, I sit in a relaxed posture, it immediately, that's just the evolutionary imperative, tries to plan possible futures, and possible selves of the future. I could take revenge with this person. I could become rich and famous. Uh, relives trauma. In looks more closely inspects unbidden memories, and it's not your fault, and it's not something morally bad. That's a natural mechanism. This knowing self that creates a duality. And now you have this problem. You have been infected by this idea of effortless non-dual awareness. And in practice, uh, I think it's almost impossible to find an intelligent way of saying alternating between practice and non-practice. Um, uh, I think the Tibetans have gotten very close in one way, that everybody else, and they are right, try to teach you how to arrive in a relatively calm and clear state. You need to do this. I think I'm not talking as a theoretician now. You need to do this for years to just realize that you're not the thinker, you're not the epistemic agent model, you are that clarity behind it in some a certain sense, but you are not. It's not you who is that. It's very strange. You are it, but in the same sense, it's not you who is identical with it. It's very hard to understand. And I think the Tibetans have this alternative of saying, just recognize it. So don't meditate, don't do anything, don't control attention, return to something, whatever it is. You could return to the whole phenomenal field as in open monitoring. You could return to your breath. And again, I think there's nothing wrong with it. This is perfect. And it's very rare, how to say, that you've done enough of this. maybe sometimes. But then there's this other thing, recognizing something that is already there. And you could put fancy philosophy of mind terminology on it. And as you know, I've created these prizes for people who go even further and develop computational models. And the hope is maybe one day something will fall out that actually helps real practitioners in the real world. Maybe by giving an instruction that has never been given before, or giving instructions in a clearer way. That could happen. But it could also be that all this neuroscientific, philosophical, dealing with these issues, it's just a defense strategy, by which epistemic agent models trying to keep themselves in existence. It's a major distractor, but it is ultimately a form of entertainment for people who are intellectually minded and who find things like that stimulating. All of this can be true. Um, uh, I can just report anecdote again from my own life. Now I've this book, which I also wrote in German, is 3.5 years of my life, right? And now this is over. And the best thing for me would be just to go for long walks in the forest and forget this book. And all these reports from all these impressive people all over the planet. But now I get emails, like from you. Uh, and I, it's very difficult for me not to have my mind cluttered with all these concepts and what I've learned from these studies. Uh, because now people come and say, but that's interesting and that's wrong. And it's very easy for me to stay entangled in this. And I think something that is very important is to always remember there's a difference between theory and practice. For instance, you can have this, there is no, I've understood this, there is dual mindfulness and discipline practice, and there is non-dual mindfulness, and there's effort and effortlessness, two different things. And I prefer this, or I do both. But then again, these are just words. These distinctions are just words. And the danger is then that you install a little avatar who keeps asking, is this effortful? And so on. And this mechanism doesn't stop. So I think in real life practice, as soon as there's some calm and some silence, There are sometimes movements in this silence, or sometimes, and this sounds very, how to say, pretentious, that just cannot be described in words and are beyond the thinker. And there are things you can only test out there. Maybe you cannot even remember them correctly. There are these subtle fluctuations in clarity, in silence, in if you meditate with open eyes. And there's just no way around going into this. And I think maybe that is very personal, but one thing that has to be let go at a certain point is the desire to comprehend, to actually understand what's going on. And I know this, but for me, it also makes me nervous. Because if you really surrender to the process and just go there again and go there again and are in these subtle realms about which you cannot really even talk with your best friend later or so, if you're in there, I mean, you might be completely deluded or this might all be wrong, and if you stop to if you really sacrifice the epistemic agent model and you stop to not comprehend anymore, you're in unknown space and you don't know, is this your experience with your I mean, you have a conditioning, you have genes, you have a very special embodiment. People are different. That is something I've learned. People are really different.
Mm.
Um, there are people who are very good at something and very extreme at something. And sometimes, as an old meditation teacher told me, he says about every 500th person, also in the Alps, comes to a retreat, makes extremely fast progress on his first retreat, and very, very fast. And they see this as meditation teachers. And it turns out he's a guy from the valley behind the mountains, who's normally up there with the cows. And then at the end he says, "Oh yeah, I know. That's what you're doing. Yeah, I know." And disappears, while everybody else still effortfully meditates and tries to be mindful. And I think one also has to have, in this interplay you asked about between effortfulness and effortlessness, mercy with oneself somehow, or compassion with oneself, that one is a normal human being, gifted in some areas, maybe not so gifted in others, and probably quite average.
Mm.
Quite average. And so this whole distinction about epistemic agent model, no epistemic agent model, centered space, non-centered space, fabricating something, recognizing something, this whole thing. I think it's important to know that there's something there, but it's very easy to get entangled in this. And then there's another thing in that context of your question that I would like to share. I think pure awareness and all these things is a bodily process. We are bodily biological creatures. I may be wrong about this. Many people do not want to believe this, but it is, how do you say, it jumps into my face or it's glaring or something like this, that it depends on bodily conditions. And I've mentioned in the elephant the most obvious bodily condition, being well rested, having had a good night's sleep. And why do I say this? Because I'm now getting older, and having a good night's sleep is not absolutely as natural, as easy as it was before. You can tell neuroscientific stories. You have these 5 different REM phases. Sleep has a functional architecture in the human brain. aging in part consists not only in losing hair, but in your sleep architecture collapsing, which is also normal, but it's not like when you're 20 and you sleep like a log and get up fresh. It's different. That is something that plays a role for practice. How well rested can you be at that age? How much, or at any age, how much sports do you actually do? Um, and so on. What you eat. So there are really, really bodily preconditions. And of course, one can get a freak about these too. One can, really. I've done this when I was young. Do a yoga and breathing exercise program in the evening, and just look at what you eat very carefully, uh, and experiment with that. And there's a lot to be discovered how you can actually influence it. And there are bodily conditions. I don't know. There are absolutely bodily boundary conditions for it to effortlessly emerge, uh, for it to be reached through practice. There are bodily conditions for it. Now, I'll give you another two examples. I very, very often have this thing that I will sit on my cushion and I know this is today. I might as well not do this. This is, I mean, this is something weird, and even sitting here, and this is going to be a really bad sitting period. I know it. There's this upheaval. I have anger. I have tiredness. I overate. Today is not going anywhere. Yeah, but you stay with it. And an experience I've had very often had is that there's an entity in me, for instance, maybe the epistemic agent model, who is convinced today this is no use at all. And after maybe 25 minutes in sitting, this is so hopeless. There will be an unexpected opening. Something unexpected. Something just because you stayed with it. And you didn't believe it was any good to stay with it, and after 25 minutes, unexpectedly, on a really bad day, when you have been angry, overate, didn't sleep well, or something like this, it is there. That's one thing uh, in discipline. But then there's also another thing, and I think this is important. Very often, sometimes something may come as a present. You really don't think you're mindful right now, and you're completely busy with something else. And then And that is, I think, an important capacity to recognize, to be able to recognize when a moment, and this moment might only be 5 seconds or 2 minutes when you're sitting somewhere or so, is given to you like a present or like grace, some people might even say, not to ruin this moment, to recognize and let go and let it happen by itself. I think that's also an important thing to recognize when this appears or unveils itself, when it has nothing to do with you, and you're even a bit surprised by it. So, I don't know if this forms into a picture for you, but these are very important distinction. Is there an epistemic agent model? Is this dual, non-dual? What is the sense of effort? The sense of effort is technically is the process of, as I say in English, quashing prediction error in the brain. There's something those people call precision control. Normal people call it attention. And if attention settles on an object and stabilizes, there is something that becomes smaller, right? And then the sense of effort becomes smaller and smaller, and the um, attention may actually be everywhere. Now, that is an interesting thing one might try. Could it be that the world is already meditating if you were just to shut up? I mean, could it be that this non-egoic self-awareness I'm talking about in the book is in some sense, I don't understand it, but is in the objects, in that chair, in that table, in this tree, this what some people in the Buddhist tradition call suchness? What is that? Um, some people in some traditions would say it's the Buddha nature in insentient objects. You know, as far as I understand, in the Chinese tradition, they've talked about this. What is this? Is it possibly not you that has to meditate, but the whole damn thing? So the also I could go on from a computational perspective here. Maybe you are not an embodied self model, but a better description is what you are is an embodied world model that contains a model of the agent running through the world, seeing things and doing things. But actually, you are an embodied world model. And when you're awake, it's a conscious world model that is biologically embodied. Maybe the actual epistemic entity is not the little thing in there, the one who thinks he's a knowing self, but the situation as a whole, the world model as a whole. That is an idea I've been fascinated with for some time. Normally, I have taught generations of philosophy students you must not confuse the personal and the subpersonal level of description. Persons think and know, brains do not think and know. Maybe that is wrong. Maybe world models in brains can know themselves. Not the animal, not the person, not the thinker, but maybe that whole world model can, in a way that's very hard to ex- explain, know itself all the time. And maybe that is, in the end, what makes it conscious. What makes it a conscious world model, that it is already self knowing, but not in a way that you do self knowing, in a completely different way of self knowing. And that way is just being conscious. This is mysterious, all pervading quality. So many people have tried to grasp or talk about. It's difficult. And the hope is that this computational phenomenology, this modern branch, may actually allow us to say this more clearly than the traditions have said it before.
Mm.
If there is a clear sense of in which our world awakens to itself. And not that bloody meditator. the, the idiot on the cushion. That main obstacle all the time. That thing that got identified with the idea of being liberated. You know. So the hope is that maybe in the future some people will be describing this much better. But the question is, if we had a fantastic, imagine we had a mathematical model of enlightenment, something like this, and scientists would be happy with it. The question is, would that help? Would, for any of us normal people, like for you and me, I'm assuming you're normal, would anything fall out of such a deeper scientific understanding that is actually helpful in reducing suffering? We then just only have a fantastic breakthrough and some mathematical model of something in the brain where a few clever people in the world say, wow, that's really an achievement. And it is not really helpful for everybody else. And, I've I've wondered if maybe we should. I would like to know from you. I mean, did you, after the way you've dealt with all this, have the feeling, what is an effective way of reducing suffering in sentient beings on this planet? Or is there maybe no sentient way, no effective way? Because basically, it is an ocean of suffering. And did you have any intuitions on this? Or
Yeah, well, it's a really brilliant question, isn't it? Really, it'd be great to be able to answer that. In my mind, the focus is on, yeah, redirecting the goal of suffering on an individual level, because that's all that's in my power as a matter of
Mhm.
uh, as a matter of limitation.
Yeah.
And yeah, so then my guess is something like computational models of meditation are, for me, given my conditioning, they make a lot of sense because it can just clarify so much of the practice that meditation becomes something much more available and accessible, which
Yeah, but
is
will it? That's just the interesting question. Will it? I have a few weeks ago, there was the annual conference of the MBSR Association in Germany. And I'm not an MBSR teacher, but I listened and I learned an interesting thing. They have a shared problem. Um, these people stop after 1.5 years.
mm,
All of their clients say, "This is wonderful. This has transformed my life. This has been so good for me." And then they stop after 1.5 years. Uh, and then there was a medical doctor who said, "Yeah, actually, and we know this from medicine, and this we don't understand it. It's called non-compliance. We give a medication to a patient, it really helps, they're happy, and they stop taking it after a certain time." Uh, I have the feeling either uh, the conditioning of most people is just so strong
mm,
in a certain direction that they can't, even if they've recognized there's something really good and healing in it. Or we have this like the evolution of curiosity in animals, that everything gets boring after a certain time and you just try something new.
mm,
Um, uh, this was great. No, I liked meditating. Uh, Now it's stock market. Something like this. Uh, what is it? I'm often wondering. Okay, this is something I hinted to. I don't know if you saw it in the elephant. A question for me is what is the difference between those people who take up a practice and stay with it, often for their whole life, and those people who take up a practice and drop it, and then often later in life get a problem, divorce, alcohol, and then return to it, um, but who are not able to sustain a practice. What's the difference? And one answer that is intuitive to me is people who have already suffered a lot. They will maybe keep up a practice when it helps. But another answer is people who are particularly deluded and pious in a certain way, who have joined a certain cult, wear certain robes, have given themselves a new name, a new identity, the monk model, the practitioner model, the I am now on a path, and I have found something and I'm on a path. And actually, I only want to talk to people who are also on a path too. This is my feeling is that the modeling process in our brain is very, very intelligent. And if it realizes there's anything that might threaten the coherence of the egoic self model, or the drive to have children, something that's not in the logic of evolution, it will develop clever escape strategies, coping mechanisms. There are stupid ones, like for me, is I can eat a little more and dull myself by overeating. But there are also clever ones, like, I should be a Dharma teacher and contribute to suffering, the reduction of suffering in this world. And uh, this is a very dangerous mechanism, I think, of ever creating a new identity, a new, as I've called it in chapter 17, also a new narrative self model. I have discovered this. Most people haven't, but I'm on my path. And if I have some free energy, I'll also do something for them. And in the logic of the self-modeling process, this I think it's very natural that people still form cults, organizations, um, and belief systems that cannot be backed up by empirical evidence or logical argument. But then again, you know, let me criticize myself. So I like to be this radical guy, who, I've never talked about this. I've just, in my 20s, I've investigated different spiritual communes, India, and looked at places. And then I got so sick with that spiritual scene and all the hypocrisy and the totally deluded people in there that I just wanted to be alone and meditated for the rest of my life by myself. That was a private affair. I didn't talk about it, also academically. And just now with this book, because I thought these people were so bizarre and it's just no group where I could fit in. Or I have tried to. And then backstage, backstage, you discover bizarre things you didn't know of as a normal disciple or member of a movement or something like that. And then it's very disheartening, very disappointing. You discover these things about people who thought you thought were real teachers. But then, so I'm against traditions, teachers, labels, the whole thing. But if there had not been traditions, and if there hadn't been retreats, I could not have tried out different meditation techniques. There would have been no place, um, where I could have learned what Vipassana is. And, there would have been no ashram where I could go and say, "I don't know, this is not my thing here. This is weird." So, the traditions and the organizations, even somebody like myself has to admit, they have an important function, I think. They have to transmit the techniques over the centuries so ever new generations of people can learn them and hopefully in a clean form, in a pure form, in a form that is, well, from teachers that have practiced this themselves and don't just program an app or something like this. And so there's this dialectic between really radical and saying, no teachers, no cults, no nothing, pathless, like Krishnamurti said, truth is a pathless land. And then one needs some infrastructure. And even if that radical way of doing it all by yourself works, for some, it may only work for some who have the strength to do that. But other people who have already been battered by life or have been deeply hurt or are not so bright simply, normal people, they may actually really need somebody who says, "This is how we do it. You sit down twice a day. If you want, we can meet once a week. And I give you a little lecture." And that's where it gets slippery already. I'll give you a little lecture. You know? But an infrastructure must be there, I think, which offers a wide variety of options for different people with different conditionings. And that is something we don't have, I think. I'm very concerned. I'm now just um, i- in the very end of translating a small book, which you don't have in English. It's called Bewusstseinskultur. And the epilogue of the elephant is like a very thin summary of it. And pretty soon, if I ever find a publisher, there'll be a 200-page book version of this idea of Bewusstseinskultur. And actually, what I think is we do need an infrastructure and places where people can go, but where they are not monks who proselytize. Is that the English word? Missionarize?
Yeah.
Yeah, who don't just want to give this and let people experience this, but want to have a following and create a cult and a community. That is something we are really, really lacking in this rich Western world. I don't know if have you. I must say something else. I read your early. I looked at your early videos on YouTube.
Mhm.
I very much like the video about minimalism.
Uh-huh.
Living simply, enormous. And I was exactly the same at 25. At that time, I thought nobody should have more than 800 German marks a month because that's what I had. It's like 400 euros. And I firmly defended the thesis that to have more than 1,000 marks, like 500 euro, is obscene. No human being should have more than 500. And now I have terribly strayed from the path. I don't know how that could happen. I have a house which is cluttered with stuff. If a war came now, the clothes in my cupboards, they would last to the end of my life. I don't need any new clothes ever again, And probably this little vegetable, probably not. A vegetable garden I have. But if there was a real crisis, I could probably, increase it and make it bigger. And now I don't know how it could happen, but I am really surrounded by unnecessary things, like these books in the shelves, um, uh, which were at one point important, absolutely important in my life, which I will never read again. And what I really, has your Swedish partner told you about the concept of death cleaning?
Yes. She has a video on her channel.
All right. So this sounds so absolutely right to me, right? 48 years of meditation practice, I cannot do it. I cannot death clean. And I really should death clean. But one part of the problem is you can't even give it away to people because nobody wants it. So, so the thing is, I thought everything you said in your video about minimalism is absolutely right. For instance, I donate 10%, like the effective altruism folks, of my gross income every month, and a little more. I do a little irrational donating sometimes too. According to my own moral intuitions, and I'm not getting into ethics, academic ethics here, this is completely wrong. So my moral intuition is I should go down to something, and I don't know if that's the proper English term, comfortable existential minimum. Is that a word? We would call it like this. Komfortables Existenzminimum. So existential minimum without traumatizing yourself, without stressing yourself. And give away everything else. An interesting thing is I don't do this after 48 years of meditation, but my intuition is I should actually do this. And I think as long as the state of this planet is like it is, everybody should just go down to what you have described in your video. Go down to existential minimum. That's my intuition. And when I was listening to what you said in that video and agreed with it all, I thought that this is actually a very ancient human tradition. It is the nun and the monk. There have always, in most cultures, been people who, as we call it today, renounced the world, completely withdraw on a contemplative life, whatever that meant for them. Maybe it was also not so contemplative, but didn't own anything, right? That's an old human tradition. Interesting is they were an exit road from the highway of evolution because all these people never had children. Those people who felt attracted to a monastic lifestyle, to a simple lifestyle, almost always didn't have biological children. So these genes always got sorted out. Horniness, greed, striving for dominance, that is what got amplified all the time. And now I'm thinking, okay, now we have wonderful young people like you thinking about minimalism and all this. And we have this old tradition of the nun and the monk. If there could not be something like secular nuns and monks, right? Without, you know, some elaborate Baroque belief system or faith on top of it all, but with practice. And there could be different kinds of practice for different people, but secular, without a belief system, but allowing us to exit the growth model, because that's what we have to do, the economic growth model, finally. And just somehow somebody has to start with a post-growth economy, although the rest never does it, but some people have to experimentally do that and be something like worldly nuns and worldly monks who do that. And why does I don't know if you have any thoughts about it. Do you think this would only catch on if it was a social movement and a cult? It had you as a leader, then it would work.
I well, I don't think it would work if it had me as a leader. But I think that there's at least it just strikes me as worth exploring,
Mhm,
right? Seems like a opportunity, because from my perspective in the journey I've had,
mhm.
it doesn't even look like these things have been tried.
Yes, but maybe there are solitary worldly nuns and monk who try it somewhere, and we just don't know them because they are so modest and they disappear somewhere in the countryside. Is that there must be some, right?
Yeah, this is true. I guess for me, it's appealing to that dialectic thing. So it's
Mhm,
like, sure, the exiting the growth economy is part of this, and social media probably is going to be a part of this, and um, getting people to work on themselves or go through to therapy and things like that. These are all going to be part of this, and coming up with the computational models. This all seems like the trajectory, which I don't know if we make it, but
mhm.
yeah, yeah, it seems necessary.
What is your view on the combination of mindful living and social media? Because I'm just now in a working group of the German National Academy. We're trying to develop some recommendations for children and youth only with social media. And of course, this has long been slept in. There's an epidemic of mental health issues
Mm,
starting in 2007 by the latest. So the worst is really, I've learned all this from these empirical researchers, 14-year-old girls.
mhm,
They are totally addicted, and they have all, they're the most highly connected human being that has ever existed, and they feel lonely. And some of them, when they turn their phone on under the blanket in the morning, they have 160 messages before they even go down to breakfast, and their parents have no idea the world they're living in. And what I'm asking myself is, if I look at my own behavior on the internet, if this is something that can be handled at all. I mean, I'm off most things, but can I handle blue sky? um, because there's this mechanism in the brain that always looks for novelty stimuli and gets attached. And it's all basically meaningless information in a certain sense. It's people showing off in a more or less subtle way. And I wonder if I could ever develop a way, because I cannot. It's interesting. I cannot use the internet as a meditator, as a long-term meditator, in a way that is sane and healthy. And that is because the mechanisms, the American companies, the AI behind it get ever better. Uh, targeting your brainstem, and they're working at it. They're learning 24/7 how to make human beings addicted.
Mhm.
I sometimes ask myself if one can at all live mindfully or healthily in this environment. If I look at all the tabs which are on top of me, there are all these affordances for action. And I can only say what my meditation practice does teach me is that I cannot control my behavior on it. And I cannot control my behavior on social media. And I'm beginning to ask myself, is this like fentanyl or something? Like one of those drugs nobody can control, nobody, however smart they are. And we're only beginning to realize it. And the question is, I mean, we're probably going to advocate that children cannot use uh, social media at all before the age of 14 or 16, something like that, which then have, of course, great fun cracking all the barriers, which will never work. And their environment is addicted parents, and we make a rule or a law for children, and the parents, the whole adult culture is already fully addicted. And I was wondering, do you have an intuition or an idea about this? Can you handle it well, your practice and the email and the news on the internet, or do you also get sucked into the vortex?
Yeah, I mean, the honest answer is that I definitely can get sucked into the vortex,
Yes,
but I'm aware that I get sucked into the vortex,
yes.
and personally, I would be erring. I mean, this just says more about me, I think, but like I'm erring on the side of wanting no involvement with
Yeah,
social media or being online,
yeah,
uh, because of how because of the algorithms are working against me.
yes, 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 yes.
But I think there's maybe, at least for me, I guess, like then the movement always becomes this like personal question of going, what am I not aware of, which is creating the biological algorithms maybe for me to be um, setting myself up for something I'm well aware of. Like even if I'm not aware of the amount of business and industry or enterprise going,
Mhm,
I know that that's at play. And for some reason, I'm still gambling with my fate
mhm.
by having temptations around me. And that seems to be something closer or more intimate that I feel like I could have more control over, at least to the degree that it would become some kind of intervention.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm always very interested to hear how other people deal with this, and also how younger people deal with this. If you have developed your own kind of resilience already, how to have really brutal offline times and structure your day or so. If I mean, the simple solution would be okay. I'm close to it.
Mm,
To be completely, for instance, off all social media forever,
mm,
period.
mm, mm.
And make a note, when did I really actually learn something that was relevant?
Mm.
You know?
For me, there's a big change in or like I get really interested when you mention the parents of the children too, because the individuality seems to shape it a lot. For instance, if I look at my feed, it's
Oh, yeah.
an embarrassment compared to my wife's feed, which, although it's still on the phone and it's still, priming her for being addicted to it, just the content. I actually watch her feed and go, it's not clear to me that the content she's being suggested, as someone who's maybe a little bit neurodivergent and of a different nature, like she's got how to plant vegetables in the garden and look at these rescued animals
Mhm.
and some feminist content. And it's just, yeah, the noise that she's picking up on there is happening at a is far less what I'm getting, and it's also much slower.
What makes your noise faster, and what is it in the noise you're picking up?
I think I mean, I have to just say off the I my guess is that it's just because I'm a male, and s
Mhm, mhm.
that seems to be the first point of departure there is, "Hey, you're male, and here's your discipline-minded career
I
success.
see, yeah, 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 yeah. Very
Become
interesting.
a monk, but renounce the world, that their narrative's all pre-programmed. Even if
Mhm.
I even if I mean, maybe this is a ridiculous statement to say, but even if I watch your videos, I'm 2 videos away from, uh, a fitness influencer or something,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
another podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's completely bizarre. What I find particularly bizarre as well is maybe only 30 years ago, if you were interested in meditation and different traditions,
Mm,
you had to go to boring old-fashioned bookstores and see what they had in a bigger town and take it out, see if there was one thing, something that interested you. And now YouTube is full with all videos of all teachers that ever have been filmed. It's like a cheap supermarket. And even worse, a lot of these self-proclaimed arahants and saints and teachers is completely bizarre. The parallelism
mm.
of, oh, your cat's coming in. That's interesting.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
because I was just seeing our black cat through the window, coming through the gate. That was a which one they should be introduced to each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are all kinds of cat dramas going on at this end. I don't know.
Just the one cat or
No, the one cat is mourning because it has lost its sister, and
Ah,
we've tried to support talking about animal suffering. I saw an animal suffer that has slept in the same clothes like yin and yang with his sister for 7 years and then lost it. What pain that causes in an animal that doesn't understand where the sister is.
mhm,
And
mhm.
now we decided this doesn't go away. This is too bad. We have to get another cat. Now we have another rude little boy in the basement. Creates a lot of trouble. And we thought we were very much afraid. Will they fight? Will they cuddle? No, they're kind of not interested in each other. Nobody thought about that possibility. And we're in the process of getting these two cats to be hopefully to become friends, to overcome the mourning. And it has made me very much aware. I don't know if you have seen death in your life, hopefully not yet, but death and loss and mourning, if you know it as a human being, and then you see it very closely in animals that you know, like losing its twin sister,
Mhm,
what that causes, the hallucinating, the endless calling for the sister, the endless waiting, if she might come back through the door, the rediscovery after sleeping when waking up, not there, that moment of rediscovery.
mhm,
Um, So to me, it is quite obvious, and that for most people it isn't, I realize, is that even if these computational theories, these modern ones, are true, life is really a very, very difficult affair, to put it mildly.
Mm,
And it is an ocean of confusion and suffering.
mm,
And basically, the Buddhist story about dukkha and everything was very simply correct. And we see this if you look at the models, the computational phenomenology of pure awareness. Everybody thinks that's interesting, but what nobody really sees is this makes human life look as one endless uphill battle of prediction error management. You know,
mhm,
constantly dealing with perturbances and constantly just trying to stay in existence, predicting your own existence and devising action policies to make sure you stay in existence, your boundaries don't dissolve. That is what we are, and that is where we come from. And I think it gives a much deeper understanding of, for instance, the old Buddhist story. If this computational approach as it is today points in the right direction, it really, really, in a much more fine-grained way, um, I mean, shows what a difficult position it is to be an embodied being. And in a very, very special embodiment on this planet with this evolution in your back, these genes, that psychological conditioning,
mm,
and then having as a basic the computational imperative to stay alive and procreate.
mm, mm,
That is actually a very, very difficult situation to be
mm,
in. And there's this tradition, of course, in philosophy, also in the West, a tradition of pessimism, of people saying to be alive is not a good in itself, it's not a good thing. Many spiritual people have said something like this, but I find that for the very large majority of practitioners, um, this is not what they want to hear. They like it as an interesting, sexy thought, but they want practice as something that gives them hope, a perspective for the future. And maybe if all of these other things they said were right, maybe what the story they tell about reincarnation is also right. And it's very, very different. And that seems to be the core of things, belonging to the core of things to me, is not to develop a lot of practice like a good athlete and be very good at um, creating certain delicate states that have a beginning and an end. It must be noted, and have a beginning and an end. But to face somehow not face your breath and your thoughts, but this existential situation you're in. Right. This organism is in who never asked to get born, who never asked to have this embodiment, you know, and very obviously, you know, is suffering a lot. And I'm wondering, the ubiquity of suffering, is that
mm.
intuitive to you? Um,
Yeah, I mean, it is intuitive to me.
mm,
And it makes me wonder questions like, say we get this computational model, how
yeah.
realistic is it that we can scaffold or create environments which give us a sense of, doing better than our expectations when it comes to managing obstacles so that we're maybe getting that ego boost even when
Ego boost. Ah.
yeah, yeah. So maybe we are living in a dream of things going right.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But I don't know if you've seen that. I have been working a little bit in applied ethics of AI over the years, and I was also in the European Union's commission, high-level expert commission. And one problem they are now finding out with these large language models
Mm,
is, of course, they want to please. They
yeah.
quickly develop a strategy to please the user. And I have an interesting effect. I get emails by strangers uh, every day, and for about 2 weeks, there is a peak of people who send me long documents with conversations they've had with some model or with ChatGPT or something. And they have discovered something that nobody knows, and that is absolutely urgent. That thing is conscious. That something has emerged, and they know I think I'm stupid, and they know I have no time, and they know this, but they have the feeling they have to urgently inform experts, and they send me the dialogues and everything, and it's people have even tried multiple models and tried their own theories, and it started only 2 weeks ago, and there are now people every day with a sense of urgency saying, look at this.
Mm, mm, mm,
Very obviously sentience has emerged.
mm,
Is anybody doing anything? And in the most different flavors.
mm,
And these emails, they come from Indonesia, from America, from Thailand, and it's new. I don't know if you've seen any of this, but it's just popping up in the last uh, 2 weeks. Now, I'm wondering if it is even machines that are sending these mails, not humans,
mm.
with long, long dialogues. And of course, the ethical point is, as you've probably seen this paper about artificial suffering. Have you seen that?
Yes.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm, I mean, I think it's absolutely chanceless given the incentive landscape. Nobody will stop this
Mm,
ever. But I thought it was just very important also historically that somebody slams in a signpost there so other people can take this as a reference point and say, let's not create artificial consciousness before we're doing it. And one reason is the only model of conscious experience we have is the evolution of sentient creatures on the surface of this planet. Very obviously has created more suffering than joy, at least so I claim. And
mm,
very obviously has also created a lot of confusion on the planet. And in that situation, you don't want to multiply that target phenomenon.
mhm, mhm,
And of course, they're all greedy and they want to be the first one and write history. But I think that's very dangerous. But there's a second danger, and that refers to what you said in a way. It could be that machine consciousness does not emerge for a long time, or never, but that pretty soon many human beings are beginning to have what I term social hallucinations, have the robust illusion that there's somebody in there, you know, because the systems have learned how to trigger their social cognition mechanisms and everything. And more people get the feeling there's a presence there. And then if philosophers or consciousness researchers come and say, listen, by our criteria, that thing is not conscious. There's no reason to believe it. You may at some point have people or movements who say, who are you to say?
mhm,
You're just scientists. I see this. And I think with the non-emergence of artificial consciousness, that people suddenly have these social environments, which aren't really social environments,
mm,
and get totally entangled in them, which I think has a deeper side to it. Like, imagine you were a meditator and you are in some modern internet environment with avatars talking to you, and you try to be mindful and observe your own reactions and not to fall for it and stay aware. And then you go and meet your family back home, and suddenly you realize this is really weird too. I mean, we're not really in touch.
mm,
As Krishnamurti always said, you see that the relation is not between two people, but between two images. Your self model and the model you have of that person. that interacts, and that is we suddenly learn that in so-called normal human interaction, we are in that situation already. You know what I'm trying to say? And
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
it's um, it's very difficult. I don't know if anything comes to your mind about the value of contemplative practice or so in a changing circumstance like that. Um,
Well, I mean, maybe I get too focused on the trying to find like a solution, but that's where I get interested in, yeah, the opportunity to have this culture of consciousness or true epistemic practice where we are getting clearer about what epistemic openness is, to afford that more immediately than all these other things that we're defaulting to. So,
aha.
yeah,
Mhm.
so
So
that
I notice you have really read a lot of this stuff.
Mhm,
Mm.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. I I really love it.
Yeah. Is that you find something in it for you, for personally?
Yeah, because for me, that is um that's like the real opportunity or solution because, the it's like the more realistic I am about any situation.
What I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and so the squeeze I see is, or like the potential is like how to, yeah, how do you create a culture which is educated and valuing something like epistemic openness? How does it become more available so that, yeah, we're not defaulting to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now we're at the end of our conversation and really exhausted, but this is actually where we should have started. I've tried to um, create an infrastructure. So I've already created a foundation for Bewusstseinskultur in Germany, which wasn't easy. And I just have some very little seed money. If I don't get a very big donor at some point, this will soon end. But I'm trying, of course, getting people together and the kind of dialogue together. So there's one thing. I mean, we have these regular MPE meetings. You've been on the page of the MPE project, but one thing uh, we have thought about is what could one offer for people who are not like you and me, who do not read books and write books and have never gone to university or anything like that? What offering should there be in terms of Bewusstseinskultur for people like this?
Mm, mm,
We can do research and have clever discussions, but we're this completely small part of humanity.
mm, mm,
And what would help with stressed, ordinary folks who have to earn a living
mm,
and have a divorce? This what would really help? I have absolutely no answer to this, but
mm,
we thought that we just have to begin doing a little brainstorming on this as well. Uh, you know, because on the one hand, there are many people trying to do this. There are all these people offering meditation retreats, apps, and offering it. Uh, and some people use it and others don't.
mm,
And it gets very diluted. But would there be something more effective or
mm,
something more innovative?
mm,
Um, I don't know, but what I would like, if there was a community or a think tank or something where people would think about these questions together
mm,
and maybe come up with good ideas
mm,
what to actually do. That would be really great. I
mm.
think. Uh, uh, But you're not making any steps into that direction, are you? Right now, you're busy with house, probably, right?
I mean, that. think tank idea you have is exactly the sort of thing that I want to be a part of, or that's with the conditions I've occupied, that's sort of what's been the real change in me having that channel and wanting to reach out to you is
Mm.
I don't know what I don't know if there was something more I could do, I'd want to be a part of it. And I haven't and the the easiest access point is like trying to get in as part of the noise on the internet to try and have conversations.
As
Sort of like
part of you know, is that's good, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's sort of how I
Mm.
see it. Like,
Mm.
yeah, because it
So
is
you
yeah.
will be starting a podcast or something?
Yeah, yeah, I'd like to, but that's just me responding personally to the question of what can I do? Um, because if I it's sort of a full circle, but I think if I could go back, I would have wanted to have studied something more academic and serious at when I went to university. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, to be able to contribute in that sort of a way. So at the moment I have this like hybrid answer, which is
Yeah, yeah,
me, yeah, 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 you get it, yeah.
yeah. I don't know what the answer is.
Mm,
It's, right now, as I'm finalizing this book, I mean, it now sounds a little pathetic also, but there's this notion of failing gracefully, and
mm,
I think the historically new challenge is we have to do all this and develop an attitude in a period of very likely decline,
yes.
on the planet. We have to Intellectual honesty means for me to face the fact that it's just not looking good. How does one, in that historical period, maybe it's even not a question of spreading something, but of creating something like islands of refuge or so,
Mm,
where people can withdraw
mm,
when things get wild.
mm,
It could even be that we have to think about something like this,
mm,
of preserving something, or, you know, I don't know, somehow having regions of security,
mm,
or something. And I think that's the new thing, this historical epoch we are now entering.
mm, mm,
And I have no answer to it because when I talk to normal people, or give a talk, for most people, this is just too much. They
right.
can't, they can't take it.
Mhm, mhm,
They have children, and they want something that gives them hope. Um,
mm,
yeah, we'll have to see. It's really the. I mean, one model would be just do good locally, donate, look after animals, and practice,
mhm,
and not try to set anything up and organize.
mm.
This is again, grandiose and goal directed, as you said. If you ever have ideas, tell me. So you just want to start a podcast on this right now, right? Uh,
Well, yeah, well, that's as far as I'd sort of considered it. Because I agree with this, like, yeah, epoch we occupy that you're sort of talking about. In my mind, it's like, um, sort of my memory of like Derek Parfit's reading some of his stuff where it's
oh,
like,
really?
yeah, where it's like, it could be worth it. Uh,
Uh-huh. I see.
Yeah, so then I look around locally at what I can do, but it feels like there's this need for what you're saying of all these sort of uh, options and maybe refuges or of persevering something too. But then wouldn't that mean, I don't know, some kind of survey? In my mind, it's like about people want to improve themselves or people want to take the path of the free energy principle, right? They want to take the path of less resistance. So, um, more options like that, but it's such a multifaceted sort of a thing that it feels like there's every option which has been thought of, which hasn't been done. And then,
Mm,
yeah, maybe also options which I haven't thought of yet and other
mm.
people. thoughts too.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
this was very long. This was 2 hours 20, and I don't know if you can make any of this at all.
I enjoyed it very much
Same
regardless.
here. It was
Mm.
very nice to meet you and to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Pleasure to meet you.